Men are not meant to be weak. A weak man is not virtuous. You should be a monster. You should be a violent problem everywhere it is that you go. That is your number one duty in life, is you are not a victim, you are a problem. So you learn how to control that through your emotional intelligence and all of the other things that you said.
Aaron, welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. Man, I'm pumped to have you on. I've seen you all over social media, multiple podcasts. You're just popping off everywhere, bro. But I'm really looking forward to this one because I think you've got a great perspective on a lot of different issues that are very pressing that dads need to pay attention to. So first, why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience, tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll just go from there, brother.
Yeah, so pretty simple, man. Just my name's Aaron Love. I grew up in a Northeast Ohio town, the same place that LeBron James grew up, right? Akron, Ohio, small suburb outside of there, and was just bouncing around. Had no real direction in life, just doing stupid young kid stuff. And then September 11th happened, and I knew that my country was calling and that every generation owes a debt to this great nation. I kind of looked at my parents at the time. I was like 20, and I was like, hey, I'm not really doing anything here. I should probably go to the military. And to my parents' credit, both of them were like, yeah, you're right. You're kind of being stupid. You should go get some direction.
Your mom didn't try and convince you otherwise?
No. She's like, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. So, sometimes when you know, and my parents just knew. They knew, at that time, I mean, Ohio was going through, like, I grew up in my formative years going through, the opioid epidemic that hit, the entire Appalachia, and Ohio was no different. For a long time, it was a joke, a dark joke on our family group chat, as somebody would put a name in and be like, hey, do you remember this person? And the first question we would ask is, was it fentanyl or was it the military?
Dang.
And that was just kind of the place that I grew up in. But September 11th happened, and that was it. I just knew, and this isn't to speak on anything conspiratorially minded about the event, but I just knew that we were going to war, and I knew I wanted to go fight it. My dad, on a really good piece of advice, he's like, hey, go check out the Air Force. They got a bunch of stuff that you don't even know about. And he was right. Tried to be a PJ once, failed miserably at my first time through selection. So, pararescue, for those that aren't tracking in the military circles, because I speak to a lot of military folks, but we do combat search and rescue, not just for the Air Force, but for the entire DoD. So if you think about the most hyperbolic example, pilot punches out behind enemy lines. There's a Navy SEAL that got hurt and nobody else can get to him. They call pararescuemen. Our motto is that others may live. It's small teams. It's a special operations job, and it was awesome. I did it for about 22 years before I got out in January of 2024. I'm really open and honest and talk about my struggles with, alcoholism and my own PTSD and my own struggles with suicide and all these other things that affect the veteran community. But I was looking for another way to serve, really, at the end of my career. I knew that I wanted to still serve because I'm a citizen first and I love this country. And I wanted to find ways to help other people out. It said that a smart man learns from their own mistakes, but a genius learns from the mistakes of others. And if anything, I'd love to put my own examples out there, not for the right thing to do, but for the wrong thing to do. And to say, hey, I made these mistakes.
Yep.
Please avoid making these. As a father, as a husband, as a partner, as a man, there's a million things that I have. And I think that's what's kind of like the different vibe that we have over at One's Ready. First of all, I think we were all three of us started when we were active duty, right? When we first started, we were all active duty. And at that time,
Nice.
2019, that wasn't a thing. So we had to tread all this ground and break all these barriers and do all this other stuff just to have something that we thought was a positive net good for not only the community, but for people out there. Because there's a whole generation, as you fellas are probably aware, there's a whole generation of people that have just kind of lost their way. They just don't know. They don't know these things that we grew up inherently knowing, right? Like, I grew up before we had cell phones. I went outside at night. Like, I'd tell my mom, hey, see you later. And I would leave all day long. She'd have no way to contact me. And I would just come back home when it was too dark to play outside. Like, that's the life that we grew up in. And that life does not exist anymore. So, through the War Room, which is my other initiative, the War Room podcast, and through One's Ready, we're really looking at pouring that experience into it because we're the old salty guys now. For everything that we are, I'm just I'm a 45-year-old retired, not retired because I have a day job now because I'm stupid. But man, we're American citizens trying to find our way in this life. Fatherhood is hard enough. And then you put yourself into this crazy environment that we live in. The timeline that we're living in right now is just absolutely insane. So that was really what I leaned into when I put the military job away and decided to go on to my second phase of life. And that's where we are now. And that brought me to this fabulous podcast with you gentlemen.
Well, we appreciate the kind words, but yeah, I think we're really aligned in like a lot of what we're doing. That's why we started this podcast, was we were just looking around at the craziness of this country, and two of our co-hosts can't be here tonight, but the four of us were all just talking like, man, we got to do something. I don't know what we can do, but we're like, well, we have limited time and resources. Let's just hopefully put some good vibes out there. And if we can help just one dad be better, then at least it's worth it. Right. And thankfully we've got a lot of listeners now, and hopefully making a little bit of a cultural dent here. But yeah, we felt like there wasn't a space for men to learn how to be better dads, to even have the conversation. Really, it was almost like you were almost shunned for daring to be a better man, and we were just tired of it. So here we are. And I just love that that's kind of the impetus for what you guys were doing too, with One's Ready and now the War Room, because I think we need more of that. And I love too how you kind of highlighted that that's real patriotism. That is real, civil service. It's not wearing a uniform. It's paying forward to the next generation, instilling good values and disciplines, leveraging our experience. I agree with you. I think it's called The Greatest Salesman by Og Mandino. And it talks about like, in the beginning, he's like an onion plant, right? He grows really fast, and then he needs to be more like the olive tree that grows over time, and how the best lessons are gained not through quick little things, but through time, and experience is actually the worst teacher because it takes your whole life, right? So it's wise old men who have no time left to do anything with it. So I love the way you highlighted that too. A genius learns from other people's mistakes. And if you've heard anything about my story, that's basically my entire story too, is, hey, George did all the wrong things. Just do the opposite of me and you guys will be set, So
you guys will be set for life. Right.
Yeah, man. But I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your fatherhood experience, because you're kind of starting all back over here. And I think it's
all the way over, baby.
Yeah, man.
I was out.
You have two older ones and then an infant, right? So tell us about that.
I do, yeah. So, as things go, the hardest thing in the world is to know yourself. The second hardest thing in the world is to involve another human in that. So, my ex-wife and I, we got married, back when I was 25, and we had our first child shortly there afterwards. And, that was my beautiful daughter. And then we had my son when I was in the pipeline. So shortly thereafter, it was like 2 years, right? So they're exactly 2 years apart, but better than anything that I could ever be. I can't take any credit. They're amazing. I basically gave them half my DNA. It was like, well, hope that works out. Hopefully you got the good half, because I'm pretty stupid as it stands. But no, my daughter is about to be, so she has intent to be a lawyer. So her grades are there. She's good. She's about a year ahead in school of where she's supposed to be. So she's a sophomore with junior credits in awesome. College. Yeah, and then my son, since he was 8 years old, my son, he looked at us he was in the gifted program at school, and you have to do these individually IEPs, or what they call it, individual education plan, I think. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so we're sitting there, and he's like 8 years old, and the teacher, was like, William, on your what do you want to do when I grow up question, you said you wanted to be a doctor. Do you know what that entails? And he looks at her and he goes, well, yeah. So I have to get the best grades that I possibly can. I got to be taking college classes by the time I'm in 11th grade. By the time I'm in 12th grade, I need to be applying at whichever East Coast school I want to do. I want to be a trauma surgeon, so that's going to take another like 4 years of specialized schooling, and I'll have to figure out how to pay for that. And hopefully we have this stuff figured out with Dad. I mean, he just laid the plan out. And then and he's never deviated.
Wow.
He's just crushing it. Like he unfortunately didn't get into Dartmouth, which was his first look there, but hey, we'll take it. You didn't get into Dartmouth. I got it. But he's applied to other ones. We're hoping for that acceptance letter soon.
Yeah.
And then, and then, life is just how life is. My ex and I, we went separate ways. I got remarried, and, my wife wanted children, and I was like, too easy. That's just a quick surgery I had a little vasectomy done. So I'll just get that, reversed real quick. No big deal. That is a big deal, by the way, for everybody out there that's listening. Really think about that vasectomy if you're thinking about having one, because I trained for it. I was in good physical shape beforehand. I did everything from removing microplastics and all the things that you're supposed to do to be the absolute healthiest, and it still put me down for like a solid 2.5 months.
Dang.
It was tough. It was not cool. But it got my beautiful young 1-year-old son here, and we're starting all over. We're actually pregnant with our second. So
congrats.
Thanks. Yeah, I've tried. So the national birth rate is about 2.6 per adult human male. That's what you need to do to keep the birth rate healthy.
Yeah.
I'm on my fourth. I hope to get to about 5.2 in order to, somebody that doesn't want to have kids, I'll just go ahead and have their kids for them. So we'll see. And then I'm just engaged on that second part of life. So I get to be a dad all over again.
That's awesome.
Without all the nasty deploying and combat that's involved, because
Right.
they lived their whole life as I was a PJ.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. So you're making me reconsider a little bit, because I actually had my consult today. No kidding.
I'll tell you, better be sure about it, brother.
Yeah, I think, bro.
I really think about it.
It's
But you can, and I mean, they gave me a 70% chance when I came out of there. But I don't bother looking at the odds. If I did, I would have never done anything in my career or my life.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's talk about those odds real fast, because we were talking about this backstage, right? So the pipeline to become a PJ is, I guess, statistically probably the hardest pipeline, right, in terms of just attrition and pass rates and everything. So just real quickly, tell us a little bit about that too, because you were part of a very, very select community that I don't think a lot of people realize that.
I can't believe you didn't use the word elite. My narcissism is extremely wounded now.
It's hard for me to give too much credit to the Air Force.
Don't do it. Yeah, we don't deserve
it. No, actually, I was a deploying officer, so JFO and everything, and like A-10s are like my boys. So if ever I meet an A-10 pilot, I'll be like, your dinner's on me.
There you go. I'll give Brandon some time to think about what my base feeling is that's driving that, and we'll discuss it later.
He can psychoanalyze you pretty good here.
Yeah, good.
One of the questions I did have, you mentioned your son has this big game plan, and he has like everything mapped out, because I was the same way. And I did stick to most of my guns. Did you want him to do a lot of his medical school and trauma experience through the military? Or did you want him to do it outside of it completely?
Never talk. I told him the entire time is that I was going to give him something my parents couldn't give me, and that was options. He was going to have options to do this thing. Now, we can say this as graciously as possible, that I felt a call to serve in a time of war, and we can square that circle however you'd like. But I told him, I never pushed him one way or another. I told him, like, hey man, if you want to do this, there's a million different ways, and I'll give you every single option. But I know when he's serious about something, when he comes to me, he's like, hey dad, I want to talk to you about this. I'm like, okay, cool. What you got? The military medical health system is great. They produce great trauma surgeons. I've been lucky enough to work with the best of the best. I think that there is, you really can't hold a torch. Trauma surgeons here in America, even at the biggest trauma centers, you're talking about, a caseload. Well, military surgeons, especially during GWOT, were getting caseloads that were 4 times.
Yeah.
And the amount of injuries that they were trying to fix was, war is a terrible thing, and the things it does to the human body is even worse. So the things that they've seen, it's, really unmatched with the training and the experience that some of these folks have. But to answer your question directly, I told him he could do whatever he wanted. Like, I was here to support him. Like, that's my job. Leadership is walking to a door and holding it. Mentorship is teaching somebody how to walk through a door that you couldn't get through yourself. And that's always what I've tried to do with him, is be like, man, listen, I can't take you through every door. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I didn't start trying to be this person early enough in my life. So unfortunately, I'm not down that path. But if I do my job right, you're going to go so far down the path, I won't be able to see you. Like, you'll leave me behind. Like, that's every dad's wish for a man. And if you think about who we are as men, right? The only guy that ever wants to see you do better than yourself is, hopefully you have a couple of good friends like I do that really celebrate my successes and are there for me when I fail, which is way more than the successes. But your father is the first person that's supposed to help you get further than he did. That's every dad's dream, is to see you achieve these heights that I could have never gotten to. I'd like to think that I've maintained that ideological consistency with him, but his output speaks for itself. All I did was show him the way, help him avoid some mistakes, and everything he's done is to his own credit.
This episode is brought to you by Pre-Sleep. Hey there, my name is George Hayworth. I'm a husband and father and an entrepreneur. I work out a lot. I like to stay physically fit and active. And one of my secrets for how I stay so healthy and get so much done isn't because I'm some awesome guy. It's because I use Pre-Sleep. Now, this product is one of my personal favorites. It's probably the best supplement in my cabinet, and that is because it's 100% pure and natural. All the ingredients are made right here in the US of A, and the product is based around magnesium, L-theanine, and glycine, and these 3 work together to help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. And then on top of that, it increases the quality of your sleep. So it is a triple threat when it comes to optimizing your sleep. And my favorite thing about it is that there's no melatonin, so it's not habit forming or anything like that. And there's no sugar whatsoever. So it is super simple to use. You just take 1 scoop, put it in a glass of water, stir it up down the hatch. I do it about an hour before bedtime, and I sleep great. I have no issues getting to sleep, staying asleep, and I track it on my watch. It tells me how good my sleep quality is, and it is exponentially better when I use my pre-sleep. So what are you waiting for? Go check it out. Sign up today, get yourself a tub of this, and you will never look back. Your best sleep is waiting in this bottle of magic right here. Get 10% off at checkout by using the code GEORGE10. That's GEORGE10, or tap the link in the description below. Wow. I think what you highlighted too is such a important thing. Sorry, Brandon.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Just highlighting too, I think a lot of dads miss this, where you're not forcing them to do what you want, right? Not trying to just impose your desire for them. I mean, obviously we have hopes and dreams for our children. That's good and healthy. But you need to also have the wisdom to become a student of your children and understand that they may go a very different path than you. And if that's really what they're suited to and called to support that and learn as much as you can about it. And so I think you've highlighted and demonstrated that very well. And I just wanted to take a minute to kind of call that out, because that's a great kind of quick little lesson point, or a azimuth check, if you will, for all the dads listening, to just ensure, hey, am I actually doing that? And like with my daughter, she is very not me in a lot of ways. She is very, very opposite of me in a lot of ways. And so, I'm learning to just humble myself as much as I can and not try and push her any one way, and just really try and understand what is she actually really talented in. And that's what we should be, fostering in her, so that she has those options, to your point. So just really love that. And I think, I certainly, as a younger dad, kind of fell into that trap of like wanting things a certain way, and it's just not realistic or healthy for your children. So sorry, Brandon, I didn't mean to jump in here.
No. So with my kids, I'm the same way, but I think, like you were saying earlier, a genius lives vicariously through the lessons of others, right? And so for me, I want my children to learn through the lessons that I learned the hard way, right? And I guess one of my main questions that I wanted to ask you from the get-go is, what were some hard lessons that you learned that you have tried to pass down, kind of like to break generational cycles for your children?
So many. So, I'm a huge protector of children. It's my whole thing. My whole thing is I protect kids, and I want to protect the innocence of children.
As it should be.
As long as I possibly can, right? Like, this world is a terrible hellscape when you have to live an adult life in it. And I want to protect every single child, not just my own kids, from that for as long as we possibly can, which is my impetus for everything, right? But some of those hard lessons I learned, like I'm very open and honest, sometimes cringingly so, with my son, about relationships with women, how we treat women, how we treat people in our circles, how, and it seems like, when my son got to like dating age, it was very weird conversations, but I'm like, hey buddy, like, number one, women are revered. They should always be respected. I'll give you one simple tip. You should never want anything more than the woman that you're with wants it. Because I'll tell you what, that's one simple trick. If you think she's not into anything, I don't care if it's a movie, I don't care if it's dinner, I don't care if it's a consensual act that you're about to engage in. If you for any reason get the inkling that woman does not want it to be there as much as you want to be there, you got to go. You got to just leave, bud. It's not worth it. It's not worth your time. You'll be a better man for it. I'm big on no drinking. I've had my problems with alcoholism. I stopped completely drinking. I slowed down a whole lot towards the end of my career, and when I retired, I just completely had to step away from it. It was just something that I came from a hard drinking family. It's completely normal for us. Like, when we would get together at 10 o'clock in the morning to watch football games, we would just crack beers, and you'd be drinking all day. And I have no problem with that. But that's another thing. Like, that relationship with alcohol, that relationship with things that take you away from being present, it's stealing your time.
Oh, yeah.
When I look back and when I try to communicate these things to my son, my son's a nationally ranked weightlifter. He was the 17th strongest kid in his weight class this last year in Olympic weightlifting. Yeah, he's an accomplished athlete. But the way that I looked at to him to kind of frame it, I was like, how many training days I've slept in on or didn't get the most out of my training because I was hungover from the night before? Like, too many. One is too many. You're not there. How many fun nights do I have that I don't remember? Like, those are times that I missed. Like, time on this earth is finite and it's fleeting. And the more that you disassociate yourself via drugs, via alcohol, via a hobby that is not good for you, all of these things, I try to communicate that to him in a way that like, hey, I made this mistake. I can tell you about it. I think you should probably try to avoid it. And then, the other big one is just how we interact with people. Like there's something that we've lost over the last 20 years where, my son, when he meets you, he'll shake your hand, he'll look in your eye, he'll try to remember your name, he'll hold the door for you if you walk in behind him. These things may seem like, vestiges from a time gone by, but it's just how we interact with people. It's how we structure our life. Like I'm very big on ordo amoris, which is the way that we structure our life. You care the most and you give the most love that you have to your family and your familial unit. And then you take one step outside and then you engage in your community, and that's how you order them. And then you take one step up and then you start caring about the larger community. Like think about your city and then your state. And then you completely go out from there. You take the internal focus away from yourself. Like you are not the main character in your own movie. We have to order these things that we care about, and we have to stick to that principle. And when you do, you find yourself being a better man and engaging in more meaningful ways.
So good, man. I'm getting fired up because like I think you and me are just in lockstep with like the things we believe in and the things we teach about. And so I speak often on legacy and the importance of what legacy is and why men should focus on that. And it's not some outdated things that kings did. It's your North Star. It's your heading. It's your endpoint, right? And if you're not even thinking about it, how are you possibly going to get to a place you want to be? And the way that that's actually built is first and foremost the strength of relationships in your immediate family. 100%, number one.
That's it.
Everything else is second to that. And so I love the way that you just described that, because that's what I teach too. Is I think there's 3 tiers of like legacy, right? Number one is your family, always. And that's your marriage first, actually, and then your children. And a lot of people, what do you mean by that, George? Well, the marriage always comes first. Your wife is always number one, because you're modeling, for one, that's the original institution. Your kids are born and expect to have mom and dad loving each other and supporting each other, and that's why they feel safe. So when they are placed ahead of the parents, it actually makes the child have to be an adult, and they start to lose boundaries and healthy boundaries. It's a very strange form of emotional manipulation, actually. And so your children desire to be under the structure of the marriage. It's actually healthy to model that for them. But outside of strengthening your family in that order, then it's your career. Then it's making enough to provide for them and maybe for some others, right? To, like you said, kind of that immediate sphere. And then if you're fortunate enough, then you can really think about doing some big, culture shifting types of legacy. But that can never be at the expense. Numbers 2 and 3 can never be at the expense of number 1. Your family always has to come first. And so I even throw out like Tom Brady. Were the rings worth it, man? I don't think so. Like, I get it. You got all the money and all the fame and all the stuff. But, is it really worth it? For me, no. And so like I think if more men would just realize that and start living according to that, and this is maybe where we can go into a little bit of kind of the culture we live in, of not worrying about what other people think about you, having the courage to offend others, right? Oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that. Well, that's great. They're my family, not yours. So if that offends you, good luck, right? But
I care not what you're offended by. That means
exactly.
That's the most useless phrase on the face of the planet. I'm offended. Okay, great. I eat cottage cheese sometimes for dinner. There's 2 statements that are exactly equal in how much, 1, I care about them, and 2, how it's going to change my behavior. Exactly. Those things do not mean anything to me.
But it's just insane to me that, and I was a victim of this too. I definitely was not courageous enough in the way that I am now to do the right thing for my family, regardless of what anyone else thought or pressured me into. And I just, it's hard to pinpoint exactly where we went wrong, but there's so many factors that have just beaten men into submission, where they're more worried about ridicule or someone else's opinion than what's actually best for their own family and legacy by extension. And, I think that's number one, the thing that men have to start taking ownership over. It's not changing anyone else. It's changing you to be free of others' kind of demands on you that don't actually matter, right? I don't really know where I was going with that exactly in terms of a question. But it's just such a huge problem. And for me, I'm so fired up about it because when I got that order right, when I started really prioritizing that and accepting, like Brandon is one of my closest friends here who has been an accountability partner for me. He's been that guy that called me on my crap when I needed it the most, right? And he's trained me in many ways that only a good brother like that can. When I started getting these things in the right order, everything in my life got better. Just not overnight, but incrementally over time. drastically better. And it's not I'm not that special. I'm not that great or anything, right? I'm just an average dude. But these fundamental truths that we've strayed so far from in our society, and then they're made, if you try to do them, you're Nazi or whatever, right? Whatever term they slap on you.
Whatever ist you're going to label me today.
It's an ist or an obe, right?
Right, yeah. I'm happily every ist and every phobe that you can throw at me.
I got called a cult leader a couple months ago, and I was like, all right, I've made it. I've arrived.
Great. Yeah, great. Good one there. And, speaking to your point too, and really leaning into what men are supposed to be and ordering that family, like, I've completely even changed my language. Like when my son, he's a toddler, he sometimes hits his mom, right? I don't tell him, no, we don't hit your mom. I say, no, you don't hit my wife. She's my wife, man. You can't do that, because I want him to protect women in the same way that I do. Like, she's my world. Nobody hits her. You don't do that. And you may be my son, but my grandfather always used to use the analogy or the illusion of a tree, right? Trees don't just grow up straight on their own. You have to restrain those trees. You got to tie ropes to them. You got to make sure that they're going the right way. You got to give them the right water, the right sunlight. Sometimes you got to prune some bushes off. Sometimes you got to make sure the weeds aren't getting in there. Man, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to live. Men are service animals, as plainly as I can put it. You are there for a job. You are there specifically to do a job, and it's not always going to be great. And unless you have people around you, like I'm glad that you have somebody like Brandon. I have a group chat with 10 of my closest friends. And I'll tell you what, it ain't all sunshine and daisies in there. Yeah. Sometimes people screw up and you get flamed for it. But, sometimes some of those guys from the chat will hit me up and they'll be like, hey, man, I'm having this issue. And I'll be like, hey, you don't want to hear this, but I think you're wrong. You need those people. You need to be secure enough in your manhood to look at somebody and at the same time. And it's a crazy thing for people to try to think about, because they think about the alpha sigma male or whatever we're supposed to call them these days as this unfeeling, uncaring robot that just crushes everything in life. No, you need to be vulnerable with your friend, knowing that you're putting your relationship at risk, and be brave enough to say, hey, man, I was at your wedding. I know the vows that you said to your wife. You being petty about this issue was nowhere in those vows. I wasn't just there. Like, I was my friend's. I was actually his flower boy in his wedding. It was great. So I got to dress up and handing out White Claws. I was basically the life of the party. No big deal. But, there's been times where he looked at me and, he was my best man at my wedding. I was married by one of my best friends. Like, the three people that I would call were my best man, the guy that married us, and the guy that was sitting right up front in my wedding. If I ever have a problem with my marriage, I'm going to call them and they're going to go, hey, you idiot. I heard you in front of people say that you were going to do this thing and you were going to be a good guy, and you're wrong on this one. You need to figure it out. And you have to have people like that.
Yeah. And so this is something I've coined as courageous transparency. So you have to be able to be,
love it.
Because a lot of men think that it's something you shove down, and if they have true emotional intelligence, they start with being able to lead and love and feel emotions and understand what those emotions are so they can identify them. And then the emotional regulation comes in, where it's like, okay, I know how to identify them. Here's how I control them. And then it's relational intelligence. How do I allow those to react to other people in relationship? And like you said, hard conversations and telling people truth and love is how we sharpen each other, right? And that's truly how we serve our community. And so, we call it courageous transparency because we want to encourage people, especially men in Brotherhood, to open up and to say, hey, listen, I need your advice on this, or if I do something here, I want you to blast me. Like I've told George, like, if you see me do something or trip, I need you to let me know immediately, like, hey, fix this now, And like, if I don't hear feedback from people, I seek it. And that's one of the things I teach my son and my daughter, is not to people please, but to seek that discernment from other people, because it's really easy for us to be in our own little world of perception, and when we have somebody else's outsider perception, it's clarifying, but when we're transparent, it's even more so. So I love that. That's so good.
And all input is not good input. One of the things that I tell my son all the time, or me, from being in this social media space, because the bro-vet community is highly toxic. Everybody can't wait to tear you down. I'm sure you guys deal with it too. The biggest pushback that you ever get is
from my biggest detractors are other veterans. It's actually sad.
It is what it is. Like you're in a hyper competitive, especially for us, small teams, hyper competitive, 91% attrition rate. Like you weren't supposed to make it as your own. So you have a bunch of built-in haters already that are doing some other job and they want to tear you down. And then God forbid you get out and you try to put yourself out there, and that's a whole other can of worms. But
no, you just have to stay a victim. You can't.
Well, yeah, of course. I just one of the quotes. There's a quote that's attributed to Tom Hardy, but Tom Hardy was like, "Hey man, if you have a problem with me that's that important, go ahead and text me. If you don't have my phone number, it means you're not important enough for me to care." And the other one is that I never accept criticism from anybody that I wouldn't call for advice. You want to criticize me? Okay, great.
The truth is, no one doing better than you is going to talk shit.
Ever. It's like a video game. In a video game, when do you encounter enemies? When you're going the right way.
Yeah.
If you're going the wrong way, there's no enemies there. So if you're encountering resistance, if there are these people that you feel are saying mean things in your comment section, which by the way, I could not care about at all. I troll the comment section and everything, to include LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the worst. It's the worst.
Yeah.
You're here looking for a job.
I trigger people pretty hard on LinkedIn.
Oh, it's because they're the worst subsect of humanity. And it's like people not cool enough for Facebook, if you can imagine that. They got a LinkedIn account. Now they're a thought leader. I don't know. But, the point to all that is like, you really have to internally, and I love courageous transparency, because you have to be courage. You have to put yourself in a vulnerable space. You have to be like, hey man, I could lose the best friend that I've ever had my entire life if I don't call him and tell him that this thing about what he's doing is bothering me. That's a real cost. That's a real thing. I've known, and this wouldn't, I'm confident to say this would not happen with the friend that I'm talking about here. But, if I call him and he's like, hey, you're messed up and you need to get out of my business, and then we don't talk anymore, man, that would be terrible. That would crush me. Right. But like Jordan Peterson said, would you rather live a comfortable lie or an uncomfortable truth? I would rather live an uncomfortable truth.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think it's possible to be a truly good man without having that brotherhood like that. It is no one is that good, no one is that smart, no one is that disciplined. It's impossible. The self-made man, total myth, total BS. Anyone who tries to push themselves as I did it all on my own, they're lying. There's no such thing. Because like I have the privilege of working with some pretty exceptional people now, and just kind of being in these circles now of people that are like, man, I hope to be like them one day. Mm-hmm. And they all say, I didn't get here on my own. I had tons of help. So many people played a part in my success. And that's the truth of it. So that's kind of point number one. And that's where I wanted to get into the next line of discussion here, is like figures like Andrew Tate, right? They try to masquerade as I'm the alpha male and everyone should be like me. And if you're not, you're a loser and all that kind of stuff. And you said it earlier, right? Good men are service animals. We're service creatures, right? We give the gift of leadership, and it's not about us, right? It's about better outcomes for everyone, especially our family, especially our employees or coworkers, right? Our closest teams and friends. That's an act that inherently requires you to be thinking of someone else's best over your own. And it doesn't mean we don't ever get things that help us, right? It's not like you have to be the sacrificial, whipping boy or something, but figures like Tate really bother me because so many guys are buying into it now because they're like, well, he's the only one who's pro me, he's telling me I can be powerful and everyone else is telling me I'm toxic. So, of course they're following him. And it's such a shame really, because when you finally recognize that you can build yourself up as a man so that it's not for yourself, life becomes so immensely rewarding. Right? Like I've never been more fulfilled in my day-to-day life than I am now doing what I'm doing and getting to work with guys like Brandon and interviewing people like you and all the other things I've been doing, because it's all about someone else's fullest potential, not my own. And my growth is just a requirement to be of service. And it's just weird. It sounds maybe like a paradox or an oxymoron, right? You're living truly selfless, but it feels even better for you, right? Even though you're giving of yourself. But I'd love for you to maybe just talk a little bit more about that and really what you define authentic masculinity, because I think it's something that a lot of people have a lot of opinions on, and I think there's a lot of mistruths or half-truths, and I think the real truth is actually a pretty narrow road to walk down, but if you do it, the rewards are immense. I mean, I will never turn back, but I'd love to just kind of hear it from your perspective, because I know you're also very versed in kind of politics and everything that's going on there too. I think you've got a pretty good beat on our culture.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying that the problem with the influencer culture and guys like Andrew Tate isn't that they exist. It's not that he's saying these bad things. It's not that he's putting these ideas that I think are just untenable out into the world. The problem is that we have a culture that's accepting of that. The problem is that we've lost our way so much that people, these young men, these 15 to 24-year-olds that are rolling around in the world right now, they look at that and they're like, oh, well, I want nice cars and I want women. You're telling me I can just, Andrew Tate was a literal pimp. He was literally a sex worker that organized female sex workers to do his bidding and profit off of it. I'm sorry that
bragging about stealing their money.
It's just what it is, right? So, my problem with influencers like that, and you can apply that to everybody, when Jocko came out with his book, Extreme Ownership, that book was like basic grade 1 for like, say what you're going to do, be transparent about it, and then lead authentically in that role. The guys that read that book, when I first read it, everybody was talking about what a great book it was. And I was like, wait a second, Brandon, I love the Stoics. But the fact that we have to bring the Stoics up now with 3,000-year-old lessons in order to speak truth to these young men today and have them take it in, like the Stoic bros on the Instagrams, crack me up. Because I'm like, guys, these books have existed literally forever. Since we could write books, these lessons have been there. Why are we retreading the old ground? But it speaks to the culture here in America. For me specifically, I got into, I didn't want to be a SEAL, not because I didn't want to be in the Navy. I didn't want to be a Green Beret, not because I didn't want to be in the Army. I got into being a pararescueman because our entire motto is of service to others. Our motto literally means that even if it kills me, I'm going to bring you home. I'm going to save your life. I'm going to be there on your worst day. All these other bumper sticker sort of things that I can say there. But you're right. When you are of service and when you're living in that service, as a man, as a special operator, as a father, as a citizen, when you are living in that service, you get out of it way more than you put into it. My wife and I were having a conversation today, literally as I was, buttoning up work. She's like, I'm just so tired and I'm run down and, I've had a rough go of it too. Just, life gets in the way and business dinners and stuff that take me out of my routine. And, I actually skipped the gym this morning because I was super sore after a workout yesterday. And she was like, babe, I know that you're run down too. And my literal response to her was, yeah, but that's my job. My job is to give into you. All I care about is are you okay? And then are my children okay? Are they okay? Okay. I'll worry about me being a little bit sleepy at work or moving around a little bit slowly. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's what I'm here to do. I am of service, giving my service to people in hopes that they can use it and be better than I ever was. And when you lean into that authentic self, let me just dispel toxic masculinity as a thing. Toxic masculinity was a term that was coined in the 70s in a prison experiment where they literally looked at the most predatory individuals they had in a very small focus group. And they said that these males were, they possess toxic masculinity. Now that's been peanut butter spread for everything. If you go work out too much, you're toxically masculine. If you don't let people run over you in conversations, or if you don't let people degrade your family or degrade your name in people, you're suddenly toxic for whatever reason. No, you're just a normal human until about 10 seconds ago. That's what toxic masculinity is. It's just being an authentic male. When you lead from that space and when you lean into it and you really do these things, it's little mantras that can help you every day. When I wake up in the morning and that alarm rings and I don't feel like going to the gym, I no kidding say to myself right now, because I've conditioned myself to do it through operant conditioning, I say to myself, I am not the type of person that misses gym workouts. I am not the type of person that gets out of shape. I'm the type of person that wakes up in the morning and makes their bed. I'm the type of person that comes home and I don't care. I've got a 30-minute drive from work to this house to get my mind right, because my young man does not care that I had a bad day at work. Yep. I cannot visit that bad day upon him because I'm coming home and he's like, oh crap, dad's home. Like, I'm sorry guys, you don't get a day off. You don't get time off. That's not what we're here to do. You're here to work and you're here to be of service. And the more that you lean into it, the more that you'll find that you get out of it. For all of my military career, I can tell you war stories about being in gunfights or helicopter crashes or scary free fall events. None of that matters. The most rewarding experience that I got out of my military career was the 4 years that I was an instructor at our finishing school. At the end of this 2-year pipeline, 91% chance you're not even going to make it through assessment selection. I started with 180 guys on my initial selection team. At the end of that 2-year pipeline, only 13 of us put berets on.
Wow.
Like, you are not, it is very hard to do, right? The most fulfilled that I ever had, the most excited I was to wake up and go to work was teaching these young men that were going to be pararescuemen and starting their career because I got to go pour my experience into them. And from a, like, hey, I saw this tactical scenario. I did this wrong. You guys should do it this way. You'll do it right. That was the most rewarding to me. That's truly the only part of service in that sense, the military service part of it, that I truly, truly missed. Like, I'm going to say something that's going to be controversial. War is fun. Going with a team of people that you have fought, sweated with, bled with long before you ever got to that deployment scenario, getting into a gunfight and coming home with everybody that you're supposed to, that is the world's biggest challenge. To say that isn't fun, it is. It is. You didn't even, some days at work, and I said this, people would ask, what's your why? And my why has changed a bunch of times over my career, and it's even changed since I got out. But, my why is that I wanted to not only cheat death, but I wanted to absolutely face death and win. Because if I went and I saved somebody that was supposed to die, I was supposed to die getting there, and then they were supposed to die before I did, and I got 2 lives that day from death. And it's the most hyperbolic example you can think about it. But if you think about the type of people that we recruit for those sort of things, it's the exact same as I would say for a stand-up American citizen or a father. I want you to be open and honest and vulnerable. And I want you to have courageous transparency with your teammates and with the people that you work for and you work with. I want you to go out and I want you to do hard things. And you can't complain about it because we're going to have to do more hard things tomorrow. And it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the entire gamut. That's fatherhood. That's 2 a.m. feedings when the only thing you want to do is go to sleep and this kid's crying and you can't figure out why. What are you going to do? Are you going to wither? Are you going to go call for help and wake up your pregnant wife who is also smoked and she has to do the same thing tomorrow? Or are you going to suck it up? Are you going to man up? And are you going to do what needs to be done of you from your family?
Yeah, man. Preach, brother. That's some good stuff right there. There's a couple things here I want to drive home and expand upon is, so first you talked about that's our job, to be tired and worn out and everything. And that's why your brotherhood is so important, right? You need to complain, you need to vent. Your brothers get you, they get it, right? And oftentimes, they don't even need to add a solution, or they'll just be like, yeah, man, let it out. I'll hear you out. You absolutely feel better. So if you don't have that, you're in trouble. And I say this a lot too. Most men today are salty. They're stressed, angry, lonely, tired, and yearning for more. And newsflash, men, you're designed for connection. That's not just for the gals. That is a man-to-man requirement. You are created to desire good masculine friendship because it fulfills you in a way that even your wife can't, right? So it's not in place of your wife, it's to augment your marriage. But that is how you kind of get through things without being a statistic. And then the other reason I think we have such a mental health crisis and men are so salty is because they're not fulfilling any purpose, right? So as you were saying all this, all I heard was man on a mission with a purpose. He's got a vision for the future. He's executing. He may not be perfect. He's making mistakes. He's worn down. He needs his brothers to help him, but he's still gaining ground towards his objective. And most men are aimless. They're comfortable. They have everything and nothing because they have no purpose. And so I think the reason men are so, outside of serious cases of trauma or abuse or things like that, the average guy who has had a regular upbringing, right, the average American experience, is generally pretty miserable today. They're salty, and the reason is because they have no purpose. So they're disconnected from other men. They're not respecting themselves, and then all the mental health stuff is just the side effect of this deeper rooted issue of you're not even being a basic man in the first place. So of course you're miserable. Of course you're thinking horrible thoughts about yourself or maybe doing to yourself. And that's my take on it. I think isolation is the number one factor that drives into that, and it's a lack of initial purpose as a man. So I don't know what you think about that, because it sounds like you've had some pretty serious struggles too on the mental health side of things. But for me, that seems to be the typical diagnosis for the average guy across the country.
Yeah, we're more connected technologically than ever before, and we're also more disconnected than we were ever before. If you go back to when we were living in caves, you didn't go out and hunt and gather on your own. You went out with your tribe. You went out with those people that you were with. We've always been tribal animals. We've always surrounded ourselves with people that have the same morals, the same values, the same culture, always, since the beginning of time. It's always happened. So when you look at now, men are missing that connection. They get into this insulated, isolated sort of space where they're like, nobody understands what I'm going through, and society's telling me that I can't share these feelings and whatever else. I couldn't be further from the truth. You're supposed to lean on those friends. You're supposed to lean on your tribe. You're supposed to lean and get energy from your family and the things that you're moving towards. The Rocky quote that I always hear is, life is not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's what we got to do. Man, it's not going to be great. My son right now, and this is the early warning here, I'm going to have to go take care of this puking 1-year-old here in a second. But that's what you're supposed to do. That you have to do that as a man. You have to find what it is. And maybe you don't have a family. Maybe you really are alone and you do have a group of friends. Find a better group of friends. You were the addition of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. Like, you are the product of those 5 people. We had a very famous pararescue man. He was the first senior enlisted advisor to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That term is the SEAC. It was the first Air Force person that ever done it. He was SEAC number 4. He was actually an instructor of mine. He's a good friend. But he said famously, you can't fly with the eagles if you hang out with turkeys. You have to find those men that drive you to be a better man and hold you accountable and are there for you in those times where you do need help. Like, men need help, but you have to get that help and you have to action it, and you can't be a martyr. I love what you said earlier. Like, we're meant to continue our service, but it's not martyrdom. You're not going towards your inevitable death. It's not some slog towards the end of your life. That's not what we do here.
So everybody grow, and as you level up, you're able to take on more for others. Yep. But real quick, you got to go handle the little one.
I'm going. Yeah, give me like 5 minutes tops, and then we're
okay.
Out.
Go ahead, V.
So, everybody has their own kind of a perspective on how a man should start their journey of becoming a real man, like an authentic self man, right? So, what would be first few key steps that you would give them, like maybe the cornerstone of what masculinity or strength really entails? Like, what would be some things that you would, like a new dad that's really struggling, he's isolated, he doesn't have brotherhood, he doesn't have these things that we have. What are some core things that you would want him to get started on right away that would kind of get him launched into that next level?
Physical fitness, 100% number one. Okay. I don't care if you can't afford a gym, you can't go to a gym. You can do push-ups, you can do air squats, you can go for sprints, you can do all of these other things. Men are not meant to be weak. A weak man is not virtuous. You should be a monster. You should be a violent problem everywhere it is that you go. That is your number one duty in life, is you are not a victim. You are a problem. So you learn how to control that through your emotional intelligence and all of the other things that you said kind of at the beginning of this podcast. But man, physical fitness is number one. You are no good to your family if you're lazy, fat, out of shape, can't walk upstairs. You can't protect anybody in that nature. So the more that you lean into that first part, that physical fitness, that self-care. I don't care if you have to get up early to do it. I don't want to hear it. Get up early. I work out at 4:30 in the morning. It's not because I got used to it. It's because I don't want to take 2 hours out of my son's day away from him, because every minute to him is precious. So I'm back at the gym. I'm back from the gym in the morning by the time my son wakes up and by the time my wife wakes up. Yes, it sucks. Yes, I have to go to bed early. Yes, I'm constantly tired and sore. But that's important to me because that's how you make the baseline of who you are. If your physical health is good, you have bandwidth to give to everybody else. If you're at 100% of your bandwidth because you are just smoked doing everyday tasks, you are not of use. You are not of service. From there, I would say really lean into knowing who you are as a person and kill your ego. When we were talking about, my children's hobbies or forcing them into things or giving them my opinion on what it is I think that they should do, us men, we have a really hard time disassociating, like, hey, I like this thing and I want to spend time with you. It just so happens to be my hobby. That's your ego talking. I want to see you do the things that I do because I value them. I like going to jiu-jitsu, so I'm going to make my son go to jiu-jitsu with me. Well, if he hates jiu-jitsu, you're damaging the relationship, and that is all on you. That is your ego that popped up and reared its ugly head. I think with physical fitness taken care of and a constant look at killing your ego at everything it is that you can possibly do, that's the easiest way to start, because that is just a snowball. You get a little bit fit and you're like, well, what if I got really fit? Well, okay, well, I'd be a lot more fit if I didn't eat out 4 times a week. Okay, so now I'm not going to eat out 4 times a week. You know what? I'd be even better if I stopped drinking. I'd have more bandwidth to be able to give more to my family and to the people around me if I just had a little bit more energy. Okay, well, I know how to fix that. And then as you kill your ego, you start to have more impactful conversations with people because you take that internal focus away and you're externally focused on people. You find yourself stop going, when people ask you, oh, what do you do for a living? Or, you've seen it in this podcast. You're like, oh, tell me about your military career. Man, I could, but you know what? It feels like aggrandizing myself. And the lessons that I learned from there have nothing to do with the war stories that I have. Everything to do with, the things that were not very good, spending so much time away from my kids because I was chasing a job and chasing accolades for a military organization that didn't even remember my name after my, retirement ceremony. Like your name your name in that building is as good as the echoes that are left by your own voice saying it, because they have a job to do and it's time to move on. And again, I could be upset about that, and I could rail on about how the military doesn't care about veterans or the military doesn't care about you. That's not true. That's my ego. That's me being inflamed by another, which, if I remember from Sun Tzu, it's not a good way to conduct warfare, and it's not a good way to conduct your life. So I think what you need to do there is you just need to start with what you can control. You look at this big question: how do I become a true, authentic man? Well, you get your house in order. You wake up, you work out, you make your bed, you go to work, and you do what you say you're going to do, and you come from a place of external focus versus internal focus.
I love that because, like for me personally, I love the physical aspect, but I'm a very strong believer in kind of like the golden mean kind of Greek ideology of balancing the mind and the virtue of the mind and the physicality of the body, because, you can be strong, you can be dangerous, you could be a potential killer. But if you don't have your mind trained and honed, you have a weakness. You have the Achilles heel, right? And so for me, I would say reading is just important. And, you mentioned all the Stoics and the influencers. The Stoics wrote that stuff, like you said, 3,000 years ago, but nobody reads. Nobody invests in their own minds these days.
God forbid it's written in cursive. They'll never be able to read it.
Right. And so it's like if you would just pick up a book as an investment towards your mind's honing, you would be so much better. Like I read 2 books a day. I've been doing it for almost 9 years now. And I can tell you 10 years ago, that guy is like a kindergartner compared to who I am now. And it's insane how much it's improved every facet of my life. And eventually it starts taking these puzzle pieces that you've always had questions about, and they start just clicking together. And then, with the physicality of it, I think it's what really distinguishes you between being a nice person and a good person, right? Because you're good because you choose to be, and because you can be dangerous, right? Like Jordan Peterson talks about often. So I love that, and these are really good cornerstones, as I would say, for masculinity and true men's strength. So thank you for those.
I passed. All right. I got the Brandon seal of approval there.
Good stuff,
I'll take
man.
it.
All right. Well, I think you got to go take care of the little one now. So
I'm going to go get puked on so my wife can take a shower. That's how it is, man. Welcome to toddler life,
Yeah, dude, we get it, man. We got it. That's why half our crew isn't here. So we get it.
Yeah.
Man, what's the best place for people to find you? Obviously, it's the One's Ready podcast. It's the War Room podcast. But where are your personal socials that they can track you?
Yeah, you can go ahead and follow me over at Aaron_loves_America on Instagram, or at Aaron LUVS America over on Twitter or X or Twix or whatever we're calling it these days. But you can always find me over at One's Ready. This is a completely narcissistic thing to say. If you want to contact me, just Google me and then hit any number of the things that pop up, because unfortunately I have an online presence that is big enough now where I pop up. So I would love you guys. If you guys have any questions about Air Force Special Warfare, hit up One's Ready. If you just want to hear 4 special operators from all 4 branches talk on a panel show about culture, politics, religion, all those things you're not supposed to talk about, which is henceforth made us really stupid on these topics because we don't talk about them anymore, go follow us at the War Room. But that's where you can find me.
All right, brother. Well, man, it's been a real pleasure. I hope we can do it again soon. And just love what you're doing. I love how you're standing up and speaking the truth, regardless of who it offends. And I think you're leading by example. So thank you for what you're doing. I know you're a true patriot. I've been consuming your content since I discovered you, and I was like, I'm gonna like this guy. I think we think a lot of the same things. So thanks for actually living it. We need more of that happening. And for those listening, you don't have to be a veteran to be a good citizen. Quite frankly, we were talking about this before we started tonight. Was this country would suck if everyone was a veteran. I mean, it'd be a pretty miserable place. So you can serve and be of value to your country and your community without having to wear a uniform. It's a lot of these principles that Aaron was talking about tonight. So, man, thank you so much. like I said, hopefully we can do it again. And any last thoughts for the audience before we close?
Now, just be a citizen, engage. Okay. This life is not happening to you. It's happening because of you. So I need you to get out there and engage, lean into it, find a way to serve. And remember, it is all on you. There is nobody coming for you. It is up to us. It is up to all of us. So please lean into that and take action.
All right, dads, you heard the man. Let's take action. Let's get climbing that mountain of fatherhood. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you're on YouTube, drop a subscription to us. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It helps greatly. If you are also ready to level up as a man, check out Elite Sentinel Coaching, our program designed specifically for men, where we forge men into leaders. We turn cowards into kings, weaklings into warriors. Become the hero in your story. Join us today.